the housekeeping. 3 housekeeping points for the time being. First of all, we are asked by the BLS Conference Center staff to not have any food in this room. There's a small pantry just outside our door and to the right. There's a larger pantry farther down the hallway, and there's a cafeteria 1 floor upstairs. In addition, there's a very wide range for lunchtime. There's a very wide range of food court and other options just across the street in Union Station. Inside this conference center room, though, please be sure only to have covered beverages. Covered beverages they're okay with, but otherwise they do work very, very hard to keep this conference center space nice, and so we want to be sure to respect the request on that. Second, in the unlikely event that we have a fire alarm, we need to be sure to follow the instructions of the conference center staff or another BLS personnel. They will direct us how to exit the building and also will direct us in terms of any other steps we need to take, including ultimately re-entering the building. But we're asked to remind everybody of that, follow the instructions. It may not necessarily be the obvious exit, may not necessarily be the quickest way they want us to depart the building. So please be sure to follow those instructions. One other housekeeping point, we've been asked for sound purposes ensure that, among other things, our colleagues who are participating remotely are able to hear everything. We do 2 things. First of all, anybody who is giving a formal presentation today, please be sure to sit where I'm sitting right now. That will ensure that people on the phone and also people here in the room are able to hear you. In addition, if there are any questions from the floor and you're one of the speakers, please be sure while you're sitting here to go ahead and repeat that question and to ensure that everybody who's on the line, in fact, can hear us speak. Okay, that's about it for logistics and housekeeping, so we'll go on to the substance. We are absolutely delighted that we're going to be having a workshop today on work with metadata. I do want to stop for a moment and talk about the acknowledgments here, and in particular, as I said, we very much want to thank everybody who's been involved with organizing this. In addition, this is jointly sponsored by the Washington Statistical Society, as have our previous 3 workshops in this data quality area. We're very grateful for them also for supporting this activity. And we're delighted, again, that everybody is here. In our work that we're having for all of these workshops on quality of integrated data, each of the words in that title here matter. We're very interested in saying, as we move from a traditional sample survey world in which many of our statistical information products and services are based primarily or entirely on information we collect through sample surveys, and now many of our agencies are moving in a fairly aggressive way toward work with integrating those continuing to be very important survey sources with other data sources. In a certain sense, this is not new. For example, first time when I got to the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 1999, first project I was involved with in depth was, in fact, the Current Employment Statistics Program, which is a classic example of integration of sample survey data with administrative record data, in that case, unemployment insurance information that we obtained from the Department of Labor. That program has been going on since the 1950s, and consequently, in a certain sense, our agencies have been wrestling with the general questions of both how do we go about integrating survey data with administrative record data and broader questions about data quality for a very long time. But over the last decade plus, we've been seeing that interest expanding in a great number of different dimensions. And consequently, this is a very good time for our community to think in greater depth about how do we go about doing that integration? How do we think about maintaining our fundamental mission that all of our statistical agencies and all of our partners in the private sector and academia have, which is to provide high-quality information to a wide range of stakeholders in a way that is both sustainable and cost-effective and also very high quality. How do we go about doing that? And for the time being, our workshops are focusing especially on that last notion of quality, and in particular asking, how do we go about understanding and communicating to a wide audience what we know and what we don't know about the quality of our integrated data products? So this integration work is a wonderful opportunity to think a lot about the entire profile of quality, risk, and cost, and expand our statistical portfolios. We'll be hearing about that from a number of our speakers today. And again, we need to provide clarity, and a crucial question there is providing that clarity at the right level of granularity, calibrated appropriately with a given audience, about the predominant quality features. We've had 3 workshops previously on assessing input data quality, processing quality, and output data quality. And throughout that discussion, each of those 3 workshops, we kept hearing speakers say, gee, when you're thinking about these quality issues, we need to also think in depth about data. And as a result of that, Paul and again several colleagues have organized the workshop that we have today to flesh out that. We anticipate having at least one additional workshop later on, either this year or early next year, related sensitivity analysis, which is also a question that came up quite a bit in previous discussions in the previous workshops. For each one of our workshops, each of the previous 3 and also the workshop today, we have 2 overarching questions. One is, what do you mean by quality? And almost always, the notion of quality is somehow tied very closely with the question of fitness for use. What are the most important features in particular that our data users need to understand as they think about 2 major sub-questions? First of all, should we use a particular source of information, or should we use a particular integrated data product? Is this good enough? Is it fit for the use that I have in mind? And then second, conditional upon a decision to use that, it's not just a matter of saying, okay, I'm going to use it in a discussion, but having a very carefully nuanced understanding of the strengths and weaknesses that we have in the resulting integrated data product. So that's the first fundamental question. And the second one, because we're talking about transparent reporting, is how do we go about communicating with our stakeholders? What are the best ways to do that? When we're thinking about at least 3 different audiences. One is technical specialists. One is substantive data users, an individual, for example, who may know an enormous amount about agriculture or public health or labor economics, but that may be their primary focus, and the fine details of statistical issues as such may be something that they're broadly familiar with, but may in fact not be something they're specializing in a great deal of depth. And the third group would be the media and the general public. How do we go about communicating with each of those cases? Specifically for this metadata workshop, we have 3 specific questions that we're going to be asking each of our speakers to spend some time talking about during their talks, and we also very much hope that much of the floor discussion is going to follow up on these questions. So if you're a person who likes to stand up or raise your hand and ask a question, these would be 3 great ones to ask for each of our speakers. First of all, in some cases, we're going to be having our speakers telling us about metadata work that began, in some ways was anchored, in experience with sample surveys. What are the lessons learned from that work with metadata in the sample survey context that we now can extract? And second question is, how do we apply that to high-priority projects with integrated data? We know that, in fact, many of those lessons should carry over, but let's flesh out exactly how we go about doing that translation. And furthermore, what are the nuances? What are the additional issues, additional research topics we need to explore in greater depth? And then another third crucial question is, and what's the impact of that going to be? With any work with quality, we can think about many things we could worry about. At some point, we have to set priorities, and it's crucial to understand how a given proposed set of activities is going to have an impact, again, on our agency itself and its products and services, but especially for our discussion here today in terms of transparent reporting to the 3 different audiences that we were talking about before. So with that, I will again say welcome. Thanks to all. We're looking forward to a very productive day. Okay.
I'm delighted to introduce Frauke Crowder. She's a professor, Joint Program in Survey Methodology at the University of Maryland. She is also a professor at University of Mannheim and Institute for Employment Research, a member of CNStat, who authored the Innovations in Federal Statistics, Combining Data Sources While Protecting Privacy, and Federal Statistics, Multiple Data Sources, and Privacy Protection's Next Steps. She'll give us hopefully a good overview on metadata and what CNStat would kind of maybe be expecting. Thank you.
Thank you.